The human paradox. When logic meets chaos. They thought Earth was just another backwater world, a primitive planet with nothing but noise, chaos, and short-lived creatures. But they were wrong. Buried in our blood is the legacy of survival, a history written in fire and forged in hardship. When the stars finally noticed us, it wasn't our technology that terrified them. It was the terrifying truth that humans weren't born to run. They were raised to hunt. Welcome to your nightmare. Assignment Human Sector. Commander Zix-9 stared at the assignment notification with the same expression he might reserve for a particularly offensive biological waste sample. The holographic display flickered in the sterile environment of Kratheri Command Station Alpha, its blue light casting angular shadows across his reptilian features. Assignment: Human Cooperation Protocol. Duration: indefinite. Priority: maximum. He read the words 3 times, each repetition making them no less disturbing. In his 40 cycles of military service, Zix-9 had built a reputation as the most reliable officer in the Kratheri Defense Force. His missions were planned with mathematical precision, executed flawlessly, and completed exactly as intended. He had never failed an assignment, never deviated from protocol, and never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved through proper application of military doctrine. Humans, however, represented everything his orderly mind found disturbing. Commander, his aide, Lieutenant Kress, entered with the characteristic clicking of claws on metal that marked his species. High Admiral Thek requests your immediate presence in the strategic briefing chamber. Zix-9 straightened his uniform with mechanical precision. Has the Admiral provided additional context for this assignment? Only that it concerns the Void Hunter situation, sir, and that it's complicated. The strategic briefing chamber was a masterpiece of Kratheri engineering, perfectly symmetrical, with holographic displays arranged in mathematically pleasing patterns. High Admiral Thek stood before the central projection, his massive form casting shadows across star charts that showed the expanding threat of the Void Hunters. Commander Zix-9 reporting as ordered, sir. Thek turned, his 4 eyes focusing on the smaller officer with an expression that conveyed both authority and what appeared to be sympathy. Zix-9, your service record is exemplary. 12 successful deep space operations, perfect adherence to protocol, 0 casualties under your command. Thank you, sir. Which is why you're perfect for this assignment. Thek gestured to the star chart, where red indicators showed Void Hunter positions spreading through 3 systems. The Void Hunters have developed new tactics. Our traditional response strategies are proving insufficient. Zix-9 studied the tactical display. The enemy movements appeared random, chaotic, without the logical progression he'd expect from any military force. Their behavior patterns don't follow conventional military doctrine. Sir. Exactly. Which brings us to our new allies. The display shifted to show a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth. Home to humanity. The commander suppressed a shudder. He'd read the files on humans during his initial military training. They were the species that had somehow survived 3 separate near-extinction events, developed nuclear weapons before achieving sustainable spaceflight, and had a disturbing tendency to use words like impossible as motivation rather than deterrent. Sir, with respect, humans are. He searched for diplomatic phrasing. Unpredictable. Unpredictable, yes. But they're also the only species in the galaxy that's successfully engaged Void Hunters in direct combat and won. Thek's expression grew serious. 3 months ago, a human vessel called the Pioneer encountered a Void Hunter scouting party. According to our monitoring stations, the engagement should have resulted in complete human destruction within minutes. And the humans won, decisively, using tactics that our military analysts still can't fully understand. The Admiral paused. You're being assigned to observe, learn, and coordinate joint operations with the human fleet. Your mission is to determine how we can adapt their methods to our own forces. Zix-9 felt something he rarely experienced: genuine concern. Sir, Human methods typically involve significant deviation from established protocols. Yes, Commander. They do. Thek's tone made it clear this was not a discussion. Transport to the human research vessel Pioneer has been arranged. You'll work directly with their command structure to understand their tactical approaches. The survival of our species may depend on learning to think like they do. The journey to human space took 2 standard cycles, during which Zix-9 immersed himself in every available file on human behavior, tactics, and culture. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. Humans seemed to thrive on chaos. Their military academies actually taught courses on creative problem-solving and adaptive leadership. They had a phrase, thinking outside the box, that apparently meant ignoring established solutions in favor of untested alternatives. Most concerning was their approach to risk, where Kratheri doctrine emphasized minimizing casualties through careful planning. Human military philosophy seemed to accept risk as an inevitable component of any operation. They had countless historical examples of individuals or small groups achieving victory against overwhelming odds through what they called desperate measures. As his transport approached the Pioneer, Zix-9 got his first visual of a human starship. If Kratheri vessels were monuments to mathematical precision, the Pioneer was chaos given form. The ship's hull showed evidence of numerous modifications and repairs, with additional equipment attached in configurations that defied conventional engineering principles. Sensor arrays jutted from the main hull at angles that seemed almost random, and the propulsion system appeared to be a hybrid of at least 3 different technologies. How does it even maintain structural integrity? He muttered to himself. The docking process provided no reassurance. Instead of the automated precision he expected, the Pioneer's docking bay was managed by human operators who communicated through rapid verbal exchanges filled with terminology his translator struggled to process. The bay itself was organized in what appeared to be controlled chaos. Equipment stored in locations that seemed convenient rather than logical, work areas that overlapped and intersected without clear boundaries. Commander Zix-9 stepped off his transport and was immediately struck by the sensory assault of human space. The air carried scents he couldn't identify. The lighting was warmer and less uniform than Kratheri standard, and there was a constant background noise of human activity, conversations, equipment operation, even what his cultural files identified as music, playing softly from speakers embedded in the walls. Commander Zix-9, a human female, approached, extending her hand in the greeting gesture his briefings had described. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, xenobiologist and diplomatic liaison. Welcome aboard the Pioneer. He accepted the handshake, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. Humans, he'd learned, used eye contact to convey honesty and confidence, though the intensity still made him uncomfortable. Dr. Vasquez, I appreciate your willingness to accommodate this cooperation. Please call me Elena. We're pretty informal here. She gestured for him to follow as they walked deeper into the ship. Captain Chen is looking forward to meeting you. Fair warning, though, he's not exactly what you'd call conventional. The corridors of the Pioneer reinforced Zix-9's impression of organized chaos. Crew members moved with purpose, but without the rigid formations he expected in military environments. They greeted each other casually, often pausing for brief conversations that seemed to mix professional updates with personal inquiries. The walls were decorated with images, artwork, and what appeared to be informal messages between crew members. Your ship seems very... He struggled for appropriate phrasing. Personalized. Elena laughed, a sound that his cultural files indicated expressed amusement rather than mockery. That's one way to put it. Humans tend to make any space we occupy feel like home. It helps with morale during long missions. They entered what appeared to be the ship's command center, though it bore little resemblance to any bridge Zix-9 had seen. Instead of individual stations arranged in formal patterns, the space featured clusters of equipment that seemed designed for collaborative operation. Multiple humans moved between stations, sharing information and coordinating activities, through verbal communication that overlapped and intersected like some form of controlled chaos. Captain Chen. Elena called to a human male who stood near the central command area. Our Krathari observer has arrived. Captain Marcus Chen turned, and Zix-9 immediately understood Elena's warning about unconventional leadership. The human captain was older than typical for active duty, with gray streaking his dark hair and lines around his eyes that suggested extensive experience. His uniform was regulation but worn with a casual comfort that would never be acceptable in Krathari service. Most notably, his posture and expression conveyed confidence without the rigid formality expected of military commanders. Commander Zix-9. Chen approached with the same hand extension greeting. Welcome to the Pioneer. I hope you're ready for an interesting experience. Captain Chen. I am here to observe and learn from your tactical approaches. Good, because we're going to need all the help we can get. Chen gestured to the central display, which showed a three-dimensional star map with various indicators and trajectory lines. We've got a situation developing that's going to test everything we know about fighting void hunters. Zix-9 studied the display, noting movement patterns that seemed random and strategic markers that didn't correspond to any tactical doctrine he recognized. Could you explain your analytical approach? That's where things get complicated, Chen said, activating additional display layers. Void hunters don't fight like any enemy we've encountered before. Traditional military tactics assume logical objectives, predictable resource management, and strategic thinking. These things operate on completely different principles. Different how? Elena stepped forward, calling up additional data. We've been studying their behavior patterns for months. They don't seem to value individual units the way most species do. They'll sacrifice large numbers of ships to achieve objectives that don't make strategic sense by conventional measures. More importantly, Chen continued, they adapt extremely quickly to any tactical approach. Use the same strategy twice, and they'll counter it perfectly. Our advantage comes from doing things they can't predict. Zix-9 felt his structured worldview beginning to crack. You're suggesting tactical success through intentional unpredictability. Exactly. Chen's expression grew serious, which brings us to our current problem. Intelligence indicates a void hunter fleet is massing in the Kepler 442 system. Their numbers suggest a major offensive operation, but their positioning doesn't match any strategic objective we can identify. The display zoomed in to show the Kepler 442 system, where red indicators marked enemy positions in what appeared to be a random distribution around the system's outer planets. Zix-9 studied the formation, looking for logical patterns or strategic advantages. I don't understand their positioning, he admitted. Neither do we, Elena said, which is why we need to investigate before they complete whatever they're planning. Standard Krathari doctrine would recommend a reconnaissance mission with minimal engagement, Zix-9 suggested. Chen and Elena exchanged a look that conveyed entire conversations through subtle expression changes, another unsettling human trait. That's one approach, Chen said carefully. But standard reconnaissance assumes the enemy will maintain their current positions while you gather information. Void hunters don't operate that way, Elena added. If they detect scout ships, they'll either relocate immediately or set a trap. We've learned it's better to act while we still have some element of uncertainty. You're suggesting an attack based on incomplete information. We're suggesting flexible response with multiple contingency options, Chen corrected. The plan adapts based on what we discovered during execution. Zix-9 felt something approaching panic. Everything about human tactical philosophy contradicted his training, his experience, and his understanding of military science. Yet these same humans had achieved victories that should have been impossible according to conventional analysis. How do you coordinate complex operations without predetermined protocols? He asked. Training, trust, and communication, Elena answered. Our crews are trained to think independently while maintaining overall mission focus. When situations change, they adapt without waiting for new orders. But that could lead to chaos. Sometimes, Chen acknowledged. But chaos that's moving toward a common goal is often more effective than perfect order that can't respond to changing circumstances. The conversation was interrupted by a communication alert. A young human technician called from across the command center. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Kratheri Command." "Put it through," Chen ordered. The display shifted to show High Admiral Thek, his expression grave. "Captain Chen, Commander Zix-9, we have a developing crisis. Our monitoring stations have detected massive Void Hunter movement throughout the sector. Whatever they're planning, it's beginning now." Zix-9 straightened to attention. "Admiral, what are your orders?" "Joint operation, Commander. You'll coordinate with Captain Chen's forces to investigate and respond to Void Hunter activity in your current sector. Time is critical." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in a moment of silence that Zix-9 found oddly comforting after the constant human chatter. "Well," Chen said, breaking the silence, "looks like you're going to get a first-hand look at human tactical methods." Elena was already moving toward various stations, calling out instructions to crew members who responded with rapid acknowledgments and immediate action. Zix-9 watched in fascination as the chaotic activity around him suddenly revealed underlying patterns of coordination and purpose. "What can I do to assist?" he asked. "Right now, observe," Chen replied. "But stay close. When things start happening, they'll happen fast, and we'll need your input on Kratheri fleet coordination." As the Pioneer began preparations for departure, Zix-9 found himself in the center of a storm of human activity that should have been overwhelming, but somehow felt purposeful. Crew members communicated constantly, sharing information and updates that seemed to flow through the group like some form of distributed consciousness. "How do you process so much simultaneous information?" he asked Elena as she coordinated with multiple stations. "Practice," she replied without pausing in her work. "Humans are social creatures. We've evolved to function in complex group dynamics where everyone contributes different perspectives and capabilities. But without central coordination, how do you ensure optimal decisions?" "We don't optimize for single decisions," she explained. "We optimize for continuous adaptation. Sometimes individual choices aren't perfect, but the overall system remains flexible and responsive." The concept was so foreign to Zix-9's training that he struggled to process it. Kratheri military doctrine emphasized perfect planning and flawless execution. The idea of accepting imperfect individual decisions in favor of system-wide adaptability seemed like a recipe for disaster. Yet as he watched the human crew prepare for departure, he began to see how their approach created advantages his training had never considered. When unexpected problems arose, and they did constantly, crew members addressed them immediately without waiting for authorization. Information flowed freely between all levels of the hierarchy, creating shared awareness that enabled rapid collective response. "Departure clearance confirmed," someone called from across the command center. "Take us out," Chen ordered. "Set course for Kepler 442, maximum sustainable speed." As the Pioneer accelerated toward their destination, Zix-9 realized he was about to participate in the most unconventional military operation of his career. Everything he thought he knew about tactics, strategy, and command would be tested against human methods that defied his understanding of military science. The next few hours would either validate his lifetime of training or force him to accept that chaos might be a more powerful force than order. When the plan falls apart, human solutions to impossible problems. The Pioneer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and immediately every assumption Zix-9 had about the mission proved wrong. "Contact," shouted Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Multiple signatures. I count 47 Void Hunter vessels, distributed throughout the system. That's 3 times intelligence estimates," Elena noted, her voice maintaining the calm professionalism that seemed to characterize human responses to crisis. Zix-9 stared at the tactical display, where red indicators showed enemy positions that had completely changed since their last intelligence update. "The reconnaissance data is obsolete. According to Kratheri doctrine, We should withdraw and request additional forces. Withdrawal isn't an option, Chen replied, studying the enemy formations with an intensity that reminded Zix-9 of a predator evaluating prey. Look at their positioning. The display zoomed in to show Void Hunter ships arranged in a complex three-dimensional pattern around the system's inhabited planets. It wasn't random. It was a trap, with carefully positioned elements designed to intercept any retreat route. They knew we were coming, Zix-9 realized. More than that, Alina added, analyzing data streams flowing across her station. They'd been monitoring our approach for hours. This entire situation was designed to draw us into an engagement on their terms. The commander felt the familiar comfort of logical analysis, even in crisis. Then we need to identify their strategic objective and counter it through systematic. His explanation was interrupted by an alarm that sent every human on the bridge into immediate action. Incoming transmission from the planet, Torres announced. It's a distress call from the research colony. The main display shifted to show a human female in what appeared to be a damaged facility. Behind her, Zix-9 could see evidence of destruction and smoke. This is Dr. Sarah Kim at Kepler 442 Bits Research Station. We're under attack by unknown hostiles. They're not trying to destroy the facility. They're capturing equipment and personnel. We need immediate assistance. The transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge in a moment of tense silence. They're not just setting a trap, Chen said quietly. They're using human civilians as bait. Zix-9 analyzed the tactical situation with growing horror. 47 enemy vessels, positioned to prevent retreat, using captured civilians to force engagement. By every principle of military science he'd ever learned, this was an unwinnable scenario. Captain, he said carefully, I recommend we transmit our situation to Kratheri Command and request immediate reinforcement. A coordinated response with superior numbers could take days to organize, Alina interrupted. Those people don't have days. The logical response is to minimize losses by avoiding engagement until we have tactical advantage, Zix-9 insisted. Chen turned to face him directly, and the human captain's expression carried an intensity that made the Kratheri commander take an involuntary step backward. Commander, in human military doctrine, there's a principle that overrides tactical analysis. We don't abandon our people. But the mathematics of the situation. The mathematics change when you factor in variables that conventional analysis doesn't consider, Alina said, already coordinating with multiple stations. Torres, give me detailed scans of their formations. Martinez, I need power distribution analysis. Kim, start calculating approach vectors that maximize their confusion rather than our tactical advantage. Zix-9 watched in fascination and growing alarm as the human crew began implementing what appeared to be a completely irrational battle plan. Instead of seeking tactical advantage, they seemed to be deliberately choosing approaches that would maximize chaos and uncertainty. This is insane, he muttered. No, Chen replied, overhearing. This is human. The captain activated the ship's communication system, addressing the entire crew. All hands, this is Captain Chen. We have 47 hostile vessels between us and approximately 200 civilians who need our help. The odds aren't in our favor, but odds have never stopped humans before. We're going to do what we do best, improvise, adapt, and find a way to win when logic says we should lose. The response from throughout the ship was immediate and enthusiastic. Cheers, acknowledgments, and what Zix-9's cultural files identified as expressions of determination and confidence. The crew wasn't responding to the captain's announcement with fear or hesitation. They were responding with excitement. How are they not terrified? He asked Alina. Humans don't fear impossible odds, she replied, coordinating approach vectors with multiple departments simultaneously. We're motivated by them. Some of our greatest achievements in history happened when everyone said success was impossible. But the tactical reality is about to change, Chen interrupted. Commander, I need you to coordinate with your people. We're going to need Kratheri precision to make this work. Make what work? What's your plan? Chen smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both reassuring and terrifying. We're going to do something the Void Hunters have never seen before. We're going to attack all of them at once. Zix-9 felt his structured worldview collapse entirely. That's suicide. That's what they'll think too, Alina said, which is why it might actually work. The next 20 minutes provided Zix-9 with an education in human tactical thinking that contradicted everything he'd learned about military science. Instead of developing a single coordinated plan, the crew created multiple overlapping strategies designed to confuse and overwhelm enemy response capabilities. The first wave of the attack involved something humans called aggressive reconnaissance, approaching enemy positions at maximum speed while broadcasting false information about their capabilities and intentions. The goal wasn't to achieve tactical advantage, but to force the Void Hunters to reveal their defensive patterns by responding to threats that might or might not be real. Incoming enemy response. Torres announced as red indicators on the tactical display began moving toward their position. 12 vessels breaking formation to intercept. Perfect, Chen said. Alina, initiate Phase 2. What happened next defied every principle of space combat Zix-9 had ever studied. Instead of engaging the intercepting vessels, the Pioneer began broadcasting massive amounts of sensor interference while deploying what appeared to be decoy signals and false targeting data. The approaching Void Hunter ships found themselves chasing sensor ghosts, while the real human vessel slipped between their formations using approach vectors that should have been impossible to calculate in real time. How are you navigating through their formations? Zix-9 asked, watching approach calculations that changed continuously based on enemy responses. Human intuition. The navigator, Lieutenant Park, replied without taking his attention from his controls. We're not trying to calculate optimal paths. We're feeling our way through their responses and adapting faster than they can counter. The concept was so alien to Kratheri thinking that Zix-9 struggled to process it. Military doctrine taught that successful navigation required predetermined paths based on comprehensive analysis. Humans seemed to be navigating by instinct, adjusting their approach based on immediate feedback rather than strategic planning. But it was working. The Pioneer slipped through enemy formations that should have been impenetrable, avoiding engagement while gathering intelligence about Void Hunter capabilities and positioning. More importantly, their unexpected approach was forcing the enemy fleet to reposition constantly, disrupting whatever strategic plan they had been implementing. Phase 3, Chen announced, and suddenly the ship's activity level increased to what seemed like barely controlled chaos. Zix-9 watched crew members implement a dozen different tactics simultaneously. Some prepared boarding shuttles for rescue operations, others coordinated weapon targeting for multiple engagement scenarios, while still others worked on what appeared to be completely improvised technical solutions to problems that hadn't even occurred yet. How do you coordinate so many simultaneous operations? He asked Alina, who was somehow managing to oversee multiple departments, while maintaining real-time analysis of enemy formations. We trust each other, she replied simply. Every person on this ship knows our overall objective. Rescue those civilians and neutralize the Void Hunter threat. How they accomplish their part of that mission is up to them. The approach was completely contrary to Kratheri command structure, where every action required specific authorization through clear chains of command. Yet somehow it was creating a level of coordination and responsiveness that Zix-9 had never seen in any military operation. Commander, Chen called, we need Kratheri support now. Can you coordinate with your fleet? Zix-9 realized that his own forces had been monitoring the engagement from the system's edge, waiting for orders that followed conventional tactical doctrine. Sir, my people are waiting for strategic analysis and coordinated battle plans. Tell them the plan is to help us save those civilians by doing whatever works, Chen replied. We'll coordinate in real time. It was the most unprofessional military communication Zix-9 had ever been asked to send. It violated every protocol for inter-fleet coordination and provided no strategic framework for joint operations. But as he watched the human crew achieve impossible tactical successes through pure improvisation, he found himself transmitting exactly what Chen had requested. The response from his own fleet was immediate confusion followed by what appeared to be reluctant adaptation. Cratheri vessels began moving to support positions, though their communications indicated significant uncertainty about their role in an operation that seemed to have no predetermined structure. Void Hunter response, Torres announced. They're consolidating around the planet. Looks like they're preparing for a siege scenario. Zix-9 studied the enemy repositioning and felt a moment of tactical clarity. They're adapting to our unpredictability by creating a defensive formation that can respond to multiple threat vectors. Exactly, Elena said, which means they're thinking like conventional military forces now. And conventional military forces, Chen added, can be defeated by conventional tactics when properly applied. Suddenly, the human approach made strategic sense. By forcing the Void Hunters to abandon their own unpredictable methods in favor of defensive patterns, the humans had created a situation where traditional military analysis could be effective. Commander, Chen said, now we need Cratheri precision. Can your forces provide coordinated fire support while we execute the rescue operation? For the first time since boarding the Pioneer, Zix-9 felt confident in his understanding of the tactical situation. Yes, sir. Cratheri forces excel at coordinated assault against prepared defensive positions. The next phase of the operation combined human improvisation with Cratheri precision in ways that created tactical advantages neither species could have achieved independently. While human rescue shuttles used unpredictable approach patterns to reach the captured civilians, Cratheri vessels provided precise covering fire that kept Void Hunter forces pinned in defensive positions. The result was a military engagement that succeeded specifically because it combined chaos and order, improvisation and precision, human adaptability, and Cratheri reliability. Rescue shuttles returning, Torres announced. All civilian personnel recovered successfully. Void Hunter fleet is withdrawing, added another crew member. They're abandoning the system. As the immediate crisis resolved, Zix-9 found himself reassessing everything. He thought he knew about military science, tactical doctrine, and the nature of effective leadership. How did you know it would work? He asked Chen as the crew began post-engagement procedures. We didn't, the captain replied honestly. But we knew that doing nothing definitely wouldn't work, and trying something impossible had at least some chance of success. Elena joined them at the central command station, where tactical displays showed the successful resolution of what should have been an unwinnable scenario. Human military philosophy is based on a simple principle, she explained. When you can't win by following the rules, change the rules. But without predetermined plans, how do you ensure mission success? We plan for adaptation instead of planning for specific outcomes, Chen answered. Our people are trained to achieve objectives using whatever methods work, not to follow predetermined procedures regardless of circumstances. Over the following hours, as both fleets secured the system and began coordinated patrols, Zix-9 observed something he had never seen before. Two completely different military cultures learning from each other in real time. Human crews began incorporating Cratheri precision techniques into their operations, while Cratheri officers started experimenting with adaptive response methods that prioritized effectiveness over protocol. The transformation wasn't just tactical, it was philosophical. Zix-9 realized that his own rigid adherence to predetermined procedures had been limiting his effectiveness as a military officer. There were situations where perfect planning was less valuable than perfect adaptation. Commander, Elena approached as he prepared his official report for Cratheri Command. What are you going to tell your superiors about human military methods? He considered the question carefully. His entire career had been built on providing precise, analytical assessments that supported logical decision-making. How could he explain that chaos might be more effective than order, that improvisation could achieve results that planning couldn't, that humans succeeded precisely because they were unpredictable? I'm going to tell them the truth, he decided. That human military effectiveness comes from capabilities we don't understand and can't replicate, but can learn to coordinate with. And what about your own understanding? Chen asked. How has this experience changed your approach to military command? Zix-9 looked around the Pioneer's Bridge, where human and Kratheri crew members were working together on post-mission analysis. The integration was already creating new approaches that neither species had previously considered. I've learned that there are different forms of military excellence, he replied. Kratheri precision and human adaptability aren't competing philosophies. They're complementary capabilities that create advantages when properly combined. 3 days later, Zix-9 stood before High Admiral Thek in the same strategic briefing chamber where he had received his assignment. The difference was that he was no longer the same Kratheri officer who had accepted the mission with rigid certainty about proper military doctrine. Your report indicates successful joint operations with human forces, Thek observed. But your tactical analysis suggests methods that contradict established Kratheri doctrine. Yes, sir. Human military effectiveness is based on principles that our training doesn't address. Explain. Zix-9 activated the briefing display, showing tactical recordings from the Kepler 442 engagement. Humans optimize for adaptation rather than predetermined success. Their tactical advantage comes from doing things that enemy forces can't predict or counter. That sounds like organized chaos. It is, sir, but it's chaos that achieves strategic objectives through methods that conventional analysis can't anticipate. Thek studied the tactical recordings, his expression showing the same confusion and concern that Zix-9 had initially felt. Are you recommending that Kratheri forces abandon established doctrine? No, sir. I'm recommending that we learn to coordinate our precision with human adaptability. The combination creates tactical advantages that neither approach can achieve independently. The Admiral was quiet for several minutes, reviewing battle recordings that showed impossible tactical successes achieved through methods that violated every principle of conventional military science. Your recommendation for future operations, he asked finally. Joint command structure, sir. Human forces for adaptive response and breakthrough operations, Kratheri forces for precision support and coordinated assault. The combination proved more effective than either force operating independently, and the humans agreed to this arrangement. Zix-9 smiled, an expression he had learned from his human colleagues. Sir, humans don't just agree to unconventional arrangements, they prefer them. 6 months later, the Joint Human Kratheri Task Force had become the most effective military unit in the sector. Void Hunter forces, unable to adapt to the combination of human unpredictability and Kratheri precision, had withdrawn from 3 star systems and ceased major offensive operations. Commander Zix-9, now wearing the insignia of Joint Task Force Coordination, stood on the bridge of the Pioneer as they approached their next mission area. Around him, human and Kratheri crew members worked together with an efficiency that combined the best aspects of both species' approaches to military operations. Ready for another impossible mission, Commander? Helena asked, reviewing intelligence reports that indicated another situation where conventional tactics would be inadequate. Dr. Vasquez, he replied, using the informal address style he had learned from human military culture. I've discovered that impossible missions are the only kind worth attempting. As the task force moved toward their next engagement, Zix-9 reflected on how much his understanding of military excellence had changed. He had learned that true tactical superiority came not from perfect planning or flawless execution, but from the ability to adapt, improvise, and achieve victory when logic said defeat was certain. The humans had taught him something no military academy could: that chaos, properly directed, was more powerful than order. That sometimes the best plan was having no plan at all. And that when faced with impossible odds, the human response wasn't to calculate probability of success. It was to redefine what success looked like. Contact ahead, Torres announced. Unknown signatures, similar to Void Hunter configurations, but different. Different how? Chen asked. They're organized, sir, Formation patterns, coordinated movement. These aren't like the chaotic swarms we've been fighting. Zix-9 studied the sensor readings and felt the familiar thrill of tactical challenge. It appears the Void Hunters have been learning from our engagements. They're adapting to our combined methods. Elena smiled. Good. I was starting to worry this was getting too easy. Too easy? Zix-9 stared at her in amazement. We're facing an enemy that has learned to counter our most effective tactics, and you consider this a positive development. Commander, Chen said, settling into his command chair with a relaxed confidence that had initially disturbed Zix-9, but now inspired him. When humans face an enemy that's adapted to our methods, we don't see a problem. We see an opportunity to evolve. As the unknown fleet moved into engagement range, Zix-9 realized that his education in human military philosophy was far from complete. They had taught him to embrace chaos, to value adaptation over planning, and to achieve impossible victories through unconventional methods. Now they were about to teach him the most important human military principle of all, that when the enemy learns your tricks, you don't just develop new ones, you become someone they can't possibly prepare for. All stations, prepare for engagement, Chen announced. And remember, they may have learned to predict us, but they still don't understand what makes us human. The battle that followed would become legend in both human and Krathari military academies, studied as an example of how true military excellence emerges not from perfection, but from the courage to remain imperfect, adaptable, and eternally willing to surprise those who think they understand what humans are capable of. In the end, Zix-9 would file a report that summarized everything he had learned. Humans do not fight to win. They fight to become whatever their enemy cannot defeat. This is not a military tactic. It is the fundamental nature of their species. Any alliance with humanity must understand that they are not just acquiring human soldiers. They are gaining access to the most dangerous capability in the galaxy, the refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. The report would change how every species in the Alliance approached military cooperation with humanity. But more importantly, it would establish the principle that became the foundation of galactic defense doctrine. When facing the unknown, the best strategy is not to become more predictable, but to become more human. The end.